Okay, welcome to the DED's Virtual Education Grand Round. We welcome you all to this online platform for our talk today, which is on professionalism, revisiting the character-based approach towards medical education. Okay. Our presenter for today is Dr. Sonia Ijaz Haider, and Dr. Sonia uh, completed her PhD from the University of Warwick, England. Excuse me for 1 second. Right. So Sonia complete, uh, completed her PhD from the University of Warwick in England. Following that, she did her postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Dundee in Scotland. She's currently a member of the PhD Advisory Group of Pakistan and is currently working as an associate professor with the Department of Education Development here at AKU. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Sonia for now. So give you a little background about this thing. We're going to have a little presentation from our presenter, followed by our panel discussion, and we'll have a panelist. So we'll introduce our panelists at that time. Sonia.
Right. Thank you very much, Azam, and so very kind of you. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome you all for today's session. First of all, I hope all of you are safe and remain safe. It's the rising COVID, and we are all gripped in that. So may all of us stay blessed, and Amin for that. With this, today I'll be just talking about professionalism, and I'm revisiting it from the lens of virtues, value-based in medical education. So with this, I'll move ahead with the disclaimer. And somehow we always have technology glitches coming up whenever we are having any Zoom meeting. So I hope you can all see the disclosure statement now on your screens. So yes, I do not have any relevant financial interest arrangement or affiliation that would constitute a conflict of interest. Good doctor. So when you look at the literature, you will come across abundance of definitions of professionalism, ranging from sociocultural, political, even individualistic perspectives. However, let me take you back to the time when the term professionalism wasn't even coined and who was considered a good doctor. Above all, the physician must be a man of character. It was further emphasized, men possess these qualities or not as part of their protoplasm, but they are so fundamental that they must be cultivated and developed by conscious effort. Now the question arises, why should a doctor be a man of character? Why can't he just be a doctor? Well, the answer to this question lies in good medical practice and its characteristics. What do you do when no one is looking? Or let's phrase it, what would you want your students to do when they have the power, the authority to do whatever they want to? And I would just say here, Alan's very nicely said, character is who you are when no one is looking. What do you do when there is no reward? When your students have spent hours and hours tired, burnt out, fatigued, and they know at the end of the day, there perhaps would be no recognition. What would you ask them to draw onto? What would you ask them to hold on to? Trust is just a five-lettered word, uh, you know, but the impact it has in the medical profession, I would just leave you to imagine what would happen if it was absent altogether. Lastly, but not the least, what do you do when confronted by challenging times? As educators, as practitioners, what would you do, and perhaps what you would want your students to do? Do the right thing in the right way for the right reason. I think that's what we are all striving towards. So good medical practice has its, roots right from the very beginning. And it's important that I just walk you down briefly towards the fundamental frameworks which we have in place so that it becomes more clear as to what and how this entire professionalism has come into being and why the virtues and values are so much being emphasized. So to begin with, deonatology, that was the very first school of thought which actually emphasized that good medical practice results from, adherence to rules and regulations. Uh, the second school of thought was consequentialism, and according to them, it is possible to determine any, rightness or wrongness of actions. You can do so by just examining the consequences. And the third school of thought, which is virtue, strongly emphasizes that good medical practice is the result of the virtuous character of the doctor. So, what the question which arises is the essential purpose of good medical practice to more promote skills in reasoning and arguing about the principles of good medical practice, or whether it should aim instead to influence the character of doctor? When we are telling our medical students the do's and the don'ts of the profession, what is it that we are actually doing? We are actually forming their professional identity. Therefore, medical professionalism aims to form the professional identity of the medical students. But what should an ideal, identity look like? Well, it embraces empathy, mindfulness, attention to patient care, integrity, self-awareness, teamwork, beneficence, respect, equal regard for all, eagerness to learn, resilience, and attention to self-care. That's a long list, isn't it? So are we teaching all these attributes? Perhaps let's say yes, we are to some extent. The question arises then, how are we actually teaching them? And are they able to practice that well? Let me walk you through the ground realities of what is actually happening. Modern medicine has become steeped in traditions of rules, regulations, and utilitarian practice guidelines. So, what this has actually resorted is to breaking down professionalism into compartments, and developing a system of codification in which there is a minimum standard of for what counts as good medical practice in terms of outcomes and targets. And what it does at the end of the day, it encourages and perpetuates an attitude of compliance with such standards. And as long as the practitioner complies with these standards, that's considered good enough. On top of it, professionalism is being measured using checklists. This seems a pretty straightforward approach where you can observe behavior and then measure it. But then the critical question is, are we actually encouraging professionalism, or are we simply encouraging our graduates to appear as professionals? There is abundance of evidence which strongly indicates more and more about the double standards of what is being taught and being practiced. And to compound it all up, professionalism is challenged by issues of self interest, power, prestige, profit, and lifestyle. Physicians as healers, their professional competence is no longer measured in terms of the quality of and the value of care they provide. Rather, it's measured in productivity, that is, how many patients can be seen in a specific amount of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, is this what professionalism was supposed to be? This is not what was envisioned as a good doctor. This is completely contradictory. How did we end up here? I think we'll save the discussion for another time. What's important to focus on is how we can capture what we have perhaps somewhere missed along the line, and how can virtues and values actually help. Uh, you know, there is lots of evidence which indicates that character traits exist and they influence behavior. They're stable over time and they're subjective to changes. Yes, uh, medical students come to the school with their own individual identity, and they have a system of values in place as well. But their relational and their collective identity keeps on in changing and being influenced by the medical profession. And it's very vital that we strongly encourage them to take up those virtues and values which will actually help them when confronted by adverse or challenging circumstances. Character development is a lifelong process. It's no longer that concept that it's just limited to the primary education, perhaps, or, the early years. It's a transformative journey, even for us as practitioners as well, as we keep on, assimilating and acquiring the knowledge, skills, and attitudes of the profession as we move along. So, what character education does is it aims to affirm and nurture the development of traits, disposition, and practices that will, first of all, facilitate wise actions, and secondly, enable trustworthy behaviors. So, uh, there is no doubt that it is difficult to teach professionalism. Why? Because values are not explicit, and perhaps the work pressures of the environment make it more feasible and easier to just measure the professional competence as compared to the professional values. But that doesn't mean that we should just simply stop there and and not move ahead. There's a lot of work which has started in terms of developing in North America, focusing on fostering values and virtues among the students. And in addition to that, in AKU also, our team has been working on identifying values which students deem really fundamental to their practice. And so far, we've been working on empathy and role modeling. And some of the, although this is a preliminary work, but some of this in the pipeline as well, which is focusing on development of character strengths. Um, what other thing it has been done is literature is more and more talking about the best practices which can be followed when you are trying to foster a culture where virtues and values are being practiced. So to begin with, let me take you the important bits. Recognize and build a framework that encompasses the salient domains of professionalism, particularly in your own context. Now, if you were to look at the professionalism framework defined by the Internal Board of Medicine in America, that outlines 6 domains, which is accountability, altruism, integrity, honesty, duty, respect for other, and I think perhaps excellence as well, yes. But the values, according to some of the non-Western countries, are pretty much different. And therefore, they have developed their own professionalism framework. For example, in Japan, it has been derived from the samurai warriors. And in Arabia, the four gates of accountability, their professionalism framework is derived, which is, dealing with self, dealing with others, dealing with the task at hand, dealing with gods, etc. So, what is important here is to identify what values and virtues your context, your institution holds on to, so that there can be a harmony between what is being taught and how it is being practiced and carried out. Institutions should agree on the cognitive base of professionalism that defines its nature, elements, and priorities. Now, when we're talking about the cognitive base, it is basically social contract between, the society and the medicine, which acknowledges the responsibility and, the serving towards the community and its needs. And the institution is accountable to it as well. So therefore, again, this has to be clearly outlined, delineated. How does it gel in with whatever being is practiced within the institution? In addition to top down, foster a bottom up approach for promoting professionalism. We have many examples in which, professional lapses are being documented by the faculty. That's good. But there is an equally important need that residents and medical students should be made vigilant, and they should be given the opportunity to address unprofessional lapses both in the educational and the clinical context. What it does is actually empowers them and gives them a sense of ownership where they take responsibility for whatever is happening. So when we want to promote that culture where we say that just values and virtues we hold important, and that's, going across the institution, it is important that faculty and students should take ownership, and that ownership can be one of the factors is when you foster such approaches that where there is a top down and a bottom up as well. There is a need for a comprehensive curriculum on professionalism, no doubt, but it shouldn't be just a curriculum. It should be a curriculum which promotes a shared understanding of what how does your professional values relate to the professional identity which you are aspiring for your graduates. And yes, you can begin it at the orientation from the undergraduate years to the postgraduate residency and even continued professional development. But what's really important in this curriculum is that there should be opportunities and lots of opportunities where students can discuss and reflect on unprofessional lapses and on behaviors, exemplary behaviors on that. Build in time for reflection. That's just, taking it through from the curriculum. That and As I'm talking of reflection, I would like to mention here Brian Hodges, who has very nicely defined and categorized reflection, as a metacognitive activity in which you think aloud about it, as mindfulness, which is a spiritual guidance, as a psychoanalysis, where you analyze your own thoughts, and as a confession, where you seek judgment on your action from others. So teachers need to be educated in these domains so that whenever they are carrying out any reflective activity with the students, they are able to utilize it to the best of the efforts. Fostering role model. Uh, virtuous role models who actually walk their talk are simply intangible in transmitting the invaluable elements of professionalism. And the educational value of role modeling needs to be recognized. That can be perhaps done in two ways. First of all, the institution needs to set a predefined criteria of what is exemplary practice and behaviors for them. Again, that has to be for the faculty and the students. And then obviously, there has to be, secondly, a defined criteria, both in terms of unprofessional lapses. The entire process needs to be transparent enough so that it is just everybody can see what's happening whenever you are d- exhibiting a professional exemplary practice, and where you are not so exemplary. Professionalism retreats customized for senior leaders to guide them in their role as professional champions. Whenever we are undertaking any I would say institution-wide initiatives, it is important that the senior leadership should be on board, and how they can help, how they can how they can facilitate the entire process. Sometimes they need guidance as well. Um, so that's really important as well. Institutional forum for addressing challenges in professionalism. This is, I think this is perhaps one of the most vital thing any institution can have, a platform where both faculty and students can thrash out the conflicts, the tensions, the differences which arise in moments of stress. And this is an opportunity. I think this platform gives that opportunity where you are able to actually go to the nitty gritty. So it's vitally important that this sort of platform should be provided. Linkages with national and international institutions for promoting programs which foster the values. For example, in the John Hopkins and Mount Sinai, the on being a model care doctor program or the safe harbor programs. I think it's important to have linkages which can serve you as a guide as well. And of course, there can be further collaborative initiatives taking place as well. And of course, the value of research. There needs to be proposals on novel investigating in promoting virtues and values in professionalism. So, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, um, I would say learners must be taught values and virtues. They must see character values modeled in faculty. There has to be, and I would restate, regular opportunity to intentionally reflect on values and encounters that challenge them on their own and on their current practices. Transition from behavior to values. I think it's a very good idea that we begin with the behaviors, but it's important that that should not be a full stop. It should come down to the values. Otherwise, we will still be perhaps 10 years down the lane rethinking why we are having so many unprofessional behaviors, or why there is a discontent between what we want our students to do and what they're actually doing. When I was preparing this entire presentation, there was so many thoughts, so many burning questions, and I thought this would be a nice platform where I can actually ask the panel and the audience perhaps to come forward with some ideas, thoughts, how we can begin. For me, I was just thinking, is professionalism all about following the rules? If yes, then whose rules are we actually following? Were these rules generated by the profession, the organization, or some hard to untangle mashup of the two? And if we are instilling virtues in our students, should we be really measuring it? I mean, is it even fair we do so? Do we really need to? And if yes, for who? The institution, public, or ourselves only? And what would happen if we just reimagine our schools not as sites of mere cultural reproduction, but perhaps sites which are more imaginative and innovative? Thank you very much, and it's open for the panel discussion and the audience, but perhaps Dr. Azam would move from here then.
Thank you, Sonia. So right now we're going to go into the panel discussion, and um, at this time I'd like to introduce the panelists, starting off with Dr. Onab Khan, who is a faculty member here at the Aga Khan University. She's the chair of faculty medicine, and she's involved in teaching undergraduate, postgraduate, the undergraduate, postgraduate studies, both here within and outside AQ. Um, Her teaching includes both clinical and didactic teaching, and she has been pivotal in starting a one-year blended learning course for the GPs in our local community here in Pakistan. Uh, and this course has been recently been endorsed by WHO as a regional diploma in family medicine. Um, Dr. Nab.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome, Dr. Adam. Thank you for that comment.
So our next panelist is Dr. Sadaf Khan. She's is Dr. Sadaf here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So she graduated from the Al Khan University and is an alumni, and she completed her surgery residency from the Henry Ford Hospital, Detroit, where she also joined as a senior faculty member. She came and rejoined AQ as faculty here, and at which time she did her diploma in health professional education. After which she, for a time, went to Case Western Reserve University and subsequently rejoined AQ. After that, she is currently the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Medical Education and the Director of Center of Global Surgical Care here at AQ. And she is also the Program Coordinator for the General Surgery Postgraduate Residency Program. So welcome, Dr. Sadaf.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Our next panelist is Dr. Rukhsana Zubairi, well-known figure here locally. She is a Tamgha Imtiaz winner and Professor Emeritus here at Al Khan University. She's also the Director of the National Residency Program for the South CPSP, College of Physicians and Surgeons of Pakistan. She's a member of the Executive Committee, AMEMR, which is the member of the Aspire Academy, Aspire Assessment Panel, and Aspire Board for the Association of Medical Education in Europe. She has been conducting tabletop discussions on professionalism in the annual meetings of the AAMC, which is the American Association of Medical Colleges. Finally, I'd like to introduce our guest panelist as well. Joining us all the way from UK, Dr. Vikram Jha. He's a medical educationist and a clinician with a long-standing research interest in medical professionalism. He's been in the UK for over 23 years as a clinical academic, and with the last 5, he was the head of the Liverpool Medical School. He is currently working as a consultant and advisor in medical education. Welcome, Dr. Vikram Jha.
Thank you very much.
So now we open up our forum to questions. So if any of the panelists have any question or any comment that they'd like to make about the presentation or about their experience in professionalism.
Maybe we can take it one by one, Azam, because we're 4 in disparate locations. So you can ask different people by name.
Okay. So Dr. Zubairi, maybe perhaps you could lead.
Okay, because I spoke. Thank you, Azam. Right. First of all, Sonia, Dr. Sonia gave us a very, it was a presentation not telling us what professionalism is, but making us think about what it should be. So I'm very grateful the way she presented, and well done, Sonia.
Thank you
just
very
want
much.
to add one thing. I know I think it was Alan who said professionalism is what you do when nobody's observing you. If I may add to it.
Gee,
Actually,
please. Sure.
professionalism is what you do when no one is observing, but it's actually what you do when you're stressed for time. You have no time, you're very busy, you haven't slept. What do you do then is actually those behaviors which portray your values, and they're instinctive and from within. So that is actually one of the things that has been noticed. So I think I'm not correcting in any way, I'm just adding to this. This is actually when you have no time, what is it you do? So I just thought, okay, I will just add that bit. And then when we're talking of learners, if I may just add, the two things I'd just like to say. First of all, professionalism isn't for learners. Professionalism is for the institution. It is the same values, the same behaviors that must be portrayed, ingrained, internalized, made part of within yourself, from the leadership to the staff, to the faculty, to residents and interns, and even the house staff, or the cleaning women, or the cleaning men. So it is something that makes you think. And I think it's so important that Cruis and Cruis in 2016 actually changed the Miller's triangle. And on top of does, they added is. It is not what you do, it is what you are. And that is portrayed when no one is watching, when you don't have time, when you're super busy, you haven't slept, you want to cut all kinds of corners, but you do not. So that is one of the things. The last thing I want to say, and then I'll let other people. We are always thinking that we have to reinvent the wheel at times. Of course, there are cultural differences. Of course, there are. In 2010, Brian Hodges was the first one to say every institution should have their own definition of what professionalism is for that institution. But over time, what we have seen is there are 5 pillars that are common. So if you draw a Venn diagram, there's an area within which will be common for all, which would be honesty, it would be integrity, it would be ethics, it would be self-improvement, improvement for your profession, patient doctoral. So those are the 5 pillars which are common, at least for medicine. And these are different ways, things that you can. So the context may change. What would you do if this happens? The nuances, but there's certain basic principles that I feel must remain the same, because honesty must remain honesty. Moral reasoning must remain. Patient confidentiality will remain. Self-improvement, owning up for medical errors, accountability. So those are things that are common. So the reason I say so is that in an attempt to get the context right, we sometimes forget that there's a body that is well known and appreciated. I'm not saying it is the complete body, but there is a large element. So I'll stop here because there will be lots of other questions coming in. So thank you for asking, Azam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zubairi, for that clarification. Would any of the rest of the panelists like to add, or should we go to some questions that the audience members may have? So yes, Dr. Vikram.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of things really. So again, Sonia, well done. I really enjoyed the talk because it wasn't a talk really. It was raising issues and questions, which was quite interesting. Just 2, 3 things really. One was something that's always bothered me is and that's one of the problems with adopting a values-based professionalism approach. 2 things really. One is is there a hierarchy of values related to professionalism? So what I mean is, are some digresses worse than others? You know, so we know that there's professionalism charters, we know that honesty, integrity, etc., is all good stuff, but within that, are there some lapses which are less important, if you like, than others? So that's something for us to discuss. I'm not giving you the answer, because I don't know. The other problem I have with values, and it's interesting because my PhD was based very much on beliefs and values, but I've kind of moved 15, 20 years later to thinking a bit more broadly about professionalism, is that it's very, very difficult to measure.
Yes.
And faking is very, very easy. And how do, and what this is something that we've all struggled with over the years, is how do you pick students? And students are really savvy, as our faculty actually, in faking professional behavior. So that's one bit. The other thing I wanted to raise, and maybe we could bring this as a discussion, Sonia, I'm not interrupting you, I just want to, I'll lose my train of thought. The second was something about how intrinsic values interact with the other sort of variables that are linked with professional behavior, such as your cultural norms, your social norms, and regulation, and institutional appetite for professional or unprofessional behavior, or digresses thereof. And the last thing, and I'm really interested in this, is that none of us live in a bubble. So whilst you can, within your institution, develop a professionalism charter, and you can train your students and faculty to be extremely professional, we can't forget that they're actually living in the real world. In the real world, there are nasty politicians, there are corrupt doctors, there are murderers, and there are the people who do banking crisis. How do we dissociate, especially impressionable kids who are coming in the 17 and 18 years of age? How do we explain professionalism to them in the context of the wider world? So these are my sort of just initial thoughts.
Thank you, Vikram. I think they are very, before I answer them, I'll just the past go on. Please, Dr. Sadaf. Yes, I.
Thank you. So thank you. I really enjoyed your sort of wide introduction. And Dr. Vikram, those 3 points you raised are fantastic, really, because, I view myself as a foot soldier, really, in this, when it comes to professionalism, because I'm sort of at the operational ends, whereas all the intellectual minds I see as the generals who say that, well, this is what is the right thing and what we have to teach and assess. I'm on the other end where I have to see it operationalized. And the few things that you've put in there, the hierarchy of values, I mean, that I think is really key, because that also ties into the real world thing. For instance, I don't know how it is where you are, but where we are, being late is the norm. Being early is, oh my God, what's wrong with you, kind of thing. And so in our students, of course, we expect that, look, if rounds are starting at 7, you need to be there at 7. If clinic is starting at 9, you'll be there at 9. And we expect that from the faculty as well. Of course, the first patient might roll in at 10 a.m., although they were scheduled for 9, but we expect that they be there. Now what happens is that faculty will keep checking if somebody hasn't shown up, and in the meantime, they'll go see the inpatient, this and that. But you see what I'm saying? There's this disconnect. And it's not because the values of either the faculty or the student are not good. It's just the way that it's fitting into the real world. So how do we take a young, impressionable person and they get exposed to this mixture of real world, but this expectation of being on time, how do you drive those things? On the other hand, things like integrity, like plagiarism, like lying, putting wrong information, like making up a history, those are wrong and they are wrong. So no matter what lens you look at it from, that is pretty clear cut. So that's one thing. The other thing is assessment, right? And I've had this argument often with, not argument, debate with Sonia about assessment, because we've been working on trying to revamp our assessment of professionalism. And on the new thing, we don't have altruism. And I challenged her. I said, well, how could you assess whether I have qualities of altruism? Because I can argue that everything I do is for some kind of reward, whether it's for myself, whether it's, you know, my peers applauding me, or my students applauding me, or whatever one thing is. So I would put up for debate that I would take a faker as well, as long as the professional identity, you know, the person acts like they are empathetic. That's all I care about, because I care about how the patient perceives that person. Nobody knows what's inside somebody's heart and mind. And I think that should be okay. And we just have to assess. And for those people who are truly empathetic, it'll come to them naturally. Those who don't, at least they have to be able to fake it well and be good actors. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sadaf.
So Dr. Azam, if I may just add a few more things to the really, really insightful comments from all the other panelists. And Sonia, thank you for starting the discussion. I want to add two things. I think if you think about professionalism, especially in the medical field, I would agree with Sadaf about the fake it till you make it part. Because there is a huge power differential between you and the patient, especially in our cultural context. And so the patient's perception of what you're saying really makes a big difference. And we have to remember that the reason why we're talking about professionalism in the medical setting is not just because it's something that you need to do for your career, but it actually has an impact on the human being that you're taking care of. And so remembering that how whatever we do impacts our patients is extremely important. So we are not trying to build our students' characters just for themselves. They live in a wider community, of course, and I hope that there will be a spillover of it there. But also that first person who's going to really need them is the patient, who really is the powerless person in this interaction and relationship. So the power differential really needs to be thought of. So Dr. Roxana, just taking what you were saying, not just how you act when you are stressed or when you don't have time, but also how you act when you are the one in power. And recognizing that all of us have a lot of power when we wear that white coat and that stethoscope is important for us to remember. So I'll stop there, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So if Unam, you're so right. I mean, and I like the way you said, faking it till you're making it, because nobody is born with any of these skills, and skills are developed over time. Originally, you have to think about the skill, and maybe you do it to get good marks. Maybe you do it just to practice it again and again, and until they get ingrained. But we are hoping that in 5 years' time, some of it will be. And Dr. Sonia Heather said it. We are all developing professionally. We're still in the pipeline. So nobody's really got it made. And all of us want to improve. And I think this is absolutely key, that even if they don't have it in the heart, okay, for grades or whatever, or just to, they should be able to I won't say fake it, but I will say it, put it on, even if they don't have it in their heart. Because what happens is, and you brought this up, when you're in front of the patient, you do it once, you do it twice, and when you get that trust back from the patient, it is the most, it's a life-changing, it's a nirvana kind of state to have that kind of trust. And that, from faking good, you actually start making good. You know, that is the key. I just wanted to highlight that. I like that, what you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Zubairi.
Dr. Zubairi. So now let's turn to some audience questions. They've been piling up.
Yes.
So the first question that it comes in is that um, uh, we are all aware that violence, both verbal and physical, is on the rise, particularly in emergency wards and in the situation of breaking bad news. Shall we follow the attributes that you mentioned, risking our lives, or we, for our safety, temporarily apply the principle of beneficence on our own self? Um, may you kindly help us resolve this dilemma?
So who is it? Who is the question directed to?
So, anybody would like to field this
So
question?
I can take a little stab at it because we've actually looked at it amongst our trainees, and we run a workshop called the Lost Language, where we go through high stakes communication. And the thing is that I don't think that beneficence is ever quite the way to go, but at the same time, everybody has to protect themselves. You have to protect your physical self and your institution as well. So I think it's very important that there are institutional policies and institutional structures that can be called upon when these situations arise. And it is also very important that you have the support, that every institution looks at it and make sure that there is support available for physicians when things like this happen, which includes security, which includes being able to cordon off areas. But at the same time, it doesn't absolve us as healthcare providers of having the proper, and as teachers, we have to make sure that the trainees and ourselves, our peers, have the right tools to communicate with people. And we have to remember that when we get a reaction that is violent, it is because of grief, because of loss of control. It's not anything personal against you, because you could have met them in the street and they would have said nothing. Right? So we have to understand it from their point of view, and there are ways to deal with it. But I think more often than not, what happens is that the people who are breaking the bad news or who are on the front line are the people who are least equipped to either take care of the patient or to communicate with the family regarding a bad outcome. And I think that is sort of an organizational issue that each organization needs to look at itself and create the right structure that works for them. Thank you.
Good answer, Sadaf.
Yes, and I would just second that. Thank you, Dr. Sadaf. Yes.
One thing that we had kind of talked about in my other life was, how do we change how we talk about patients, and what a difference that makes on the way I perceive my patient also. So kind of talking about, how to deal with a difficult patient is very different than saying, how do you deal with a troubling encounter? Because by calling a patient difficult, you've already labeled somebody as difficult. And so your own internal strength, feeling of protecting yourself and kind of having that negative bias starts developing already. But if you call it a troubling encounter, there's something wrong in that encounter. And how do I need to deal with that particular encounter? And then you can parse out what needs, and then you can be taught the tools of how to deal with that encounter. I think, this started with us moving away from calling somebody a diabetic patient to a patient with diabetes. And then we've taken it forward now and saying, you're not talking about me, don't make it personal. It's about a particular situation, and learn to deal with situations. And I think that itself also helps you in changing how you think about things.
If I could just add, that's absolute. Even if it's a troubling encounter, just think on that side, it may be your cousin, your aunt receiving the news, and they're behaving like this. Just remember that. Anybody, if they've had to wait 2 hours to see you, may get mad. If they're going to hear things that they really don't want to hear, may get mad. But you have to find out why they are mad, why they are upset, rather than, I agree with Onap, you said it. it's not the patient who is difficult. It is the time or the encounter that is and I think moving that label away, because when I was a medical student, we never even knew the names of the patient. It used to be bed number 32 and bed number 14 for radiology. You know, if that was, and in a large number of hospitals, that still carries on. People are bed numbers. So we actually separate out the students, the doctors, the nurses from the bed. It's them and us, rather than all of us together battling a common disease. So you said it very good. I just wanted to say well done.
Can I just add, there's something about public education as well, that and it's something that's bothered me for several years, particularly in places like India. And one of the big reasons why there is such a breakdown in trust and communications because of so unrealistic expectations or simply a lack of sort of not knowledge, appreciation of what healthcare is about. And I think a lot of work needs to be done in educating the public, because as we know, in any communication interaction, it's a dyad. So it's not just the doctors being very polite and being very, breaking bad news. Taking the example of breaking bad news, a lot of times it's how the person receives it as well. I mean, you could be delivering the bad news to the best of your abilities, which could be pretty good. But if the recipient is not taking it the way it's meant to be taken, because they're upset or because they're awkward, whatever the reason might be, then that causes a big problem. So I think we've been quite slack in educating the public about professionalism as well, because they need to come across as professional as well. It's a relationship. It's not a one-way thing.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Vikram. So our next question is actually, I'm going to combine two questions in order to save time, because I think that is very related. And the question is how to inculcate professionalism in students. That is, when we follow to practice good practices, sometimes it is perceived as not being humble. How do you deal with this? And the second part is, how can we inculcate professionalism in ourselves? As I think it start from us.
So can I have a very brief shot at the two things?
Yes, Dr. Zubairi.
One of the things is that, remember, we think professionalism is implicit. Everybody knows it. Whenever you think everybody knows it, believe me, nobody knows it. At least not what you're thinking. They have their own ideas about it. So the first thing is to make it explicit. What is it? And the students need to know it, and the faculty need to know it. What are we supposed to be teaching? What are we supposed to be inculcating? What should the students be imbibing to develop the professional identity? So that's one of the things. The second thing is that when you are role modeling, you can role model the most beautiful concepts and behaviors, but there are two things. It used to be said a long time ago, when you're taking a lecture, say what you're going to say it, and then say what you said. Role modeling ke liye bhi. Say what are you going to show them, then show it to them. Walk the talk, and then talk the walk again. Talk the walk, walk the walk, and then talk the walk again. So in that way, the only thing is the students will actually focus on some of the behaviors that you're trying to portray. And then you say, okay, did you see that? They said, yes. And that helps, because I know when I used to have medical students in my clinic, when I used to say it out loud, in the next patient, they would actually say, okay, so I'm doing this, and they'd look at me. So that's okay. Let them practice till they ingrain it. So I just wanted to say one of those areas is good. Thank you.
So,
Can I just, sorry, I'm
no,
sorry.
no, go on, Vikram, please.
I won't be. Sonia, maybe you should you should maybe flag up who's going to speak. Is that possible? Because, sorry, otherwise.
That's
my
fine.
problem
That's
is I
fine.
can only see one. I can't see everybody. That's my problem because I'm on the mobile. Anyway, very quickly, I won't take too much time. I was just going to say carrot and stick for inculcating professionalism. One of the things we've been very poor at, and which we addressed when I was at Liverpool, is rewarding good professional behavior, because we are so obsessed with poor professional behavior that we forget that there are lots of students and lots of faculty who are actually behaving really well. And so we developed a commendation form where, if you found a student who was behaving really well, or if a student found that a particular physician's behavior was exemplary, then they would actually fill in a commendation form. The stick is much more difficult because once you've used the stick, remediation then becomes the onus on remediation is on you. And that's, of course, a topic for another day, really. That would take up 2 days to discuss. So just two little thoughts.
Right, thank you so much. And I think just adding to what Dr. Zaberi and Dr. Vikram has just said, I think it's important that we, as I mentioned, for me, I think it's time we take up the bottom-up approach as well in order to foster, and it's not only the students, the faculty, making it things more transparent in terms of what are the attributes you really want as an institution to have within both the faculty and the students. And then you take it forward from there. And then, of course, having opportunities where you can actually discuss, thrash out what is it that you want at the end of the day. Yes, you have made a framework, but that's not written in stone, right? So it may needs to be revisited. And I think that's what we institutions need to do, just revisit as well the values which we are fostering in our faculty, and somehow we've just I usually find we have just written it down somewhere and probably forgotten it along the line. So revisiting it, rewarding, and as yes, the carrot and the stick, it works, making it transparent enough.
Thank you, Sonia. So our next question is...
I think we've gone over time.
We have gone over time, but we've just got a few questions that are kind of left from the audience. Should physicians be held to a higher ethical and professional standard in a society such as Pakistan, when everyone else, such as politicians, bankers, lawyers, judges, generals, etc., ignore these values with impunity?
Okay, can I ask a question in return to the person? I just want to ask this question. Do we, as physicians, want to lower our standards to the corruption rampant in the country? Or do we, inside us, have some moral values that we would like to maintain for our own selves, for our own self-respect? And I will leave it at that.
Can I also add something to that? When it comes to teaching, I don't, each of us tries to be professional, right? But you never really know how, I don't know, I'm still a student of this. But what I have started asking my students and my residents is for anything, is what would you like to be done for you if you were a patient, or if this was your mother or your father or your brother, whatever, right? And all of a sudden they stop, and that they'll come to the right conclusion, because nobody wants to be mistreated, because this is a sacred relationship. So, the politician can do whatever he wants, anybody can do whatever. This relationship is a sacred relationship. And I think we should continue to uphold the sanctity of this relationship. And the bottom line is that that don't do anything to anyone that you wouldn't want done with yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
And we should remember that bad role models are as important in our professionalism development as good ones. So I think, if there are some bad eggs out there, then what we need to do is equip the students with the tools so that they can actually recognize poor professional behavior and try not to be like them rather than, because you can't change the words.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Dr. Vikram. I think we've only got 2 questions left, and then we can wrap up. And one would probably follow the other. So the question is, in an age where the profession of medicine is becoming big business and highly commercialized, where volumes and targets and revenues and profits have taken precedence over everything else, how can one maintain professionalism at a systems level?
Yeah, anybody wants to take it before I say anything? Because I've been saying, so maybe somebody else, maybe Jar would like to say something. Vikram?
This is a really difficult one. I think I really believe that it's a distraction. This whole business talk about running medicine as a business and the profit-making thing is a distraction, and that your core professionalism charter for at least at an institution level has nothing to do with how much money you're making or not. And I think it goes back to Ruxana's original comment about how do you behave when you're pressed for time, and I think it's about training people to still not be rude and abrupt. So I'll give a little example, so when we were doing emergency sections, I'm an obstetrician, and sometimes when you had an acute emergency and there was no time to explain anything to the patients, we had to rush them to theater. So what I would say to the patient and the partner and everybody was, look, this is an acute emergency. I've got to take you to theater now for an acute procedure. I shall come back to you in half an hour's time or 45 minutes time when I've finished, and then go through all the details with you, because I don't want to waste my time. And and there was not a single patient in my 25 years, 30 years of practice who actually said, no, I want you to tell me now. It just doesn't happen because people realize it's an emergency. So I think there are ways of, still being very businesslike, but maintaining a professional identity, really. Sorry, no solution, but that's fine.
Yes, I agree with you, Vikram, because making money is, to me, a side effect of being a doctor, right? I mean, you need to earn your money, you need to educate your people, but you became a doctor not because you wanted to earn big money. Perhaps some people do. You became a doctor because you cared what was happening to the people. And if you ever had that feeling, ever in your life, all I would like you to do is to reflect and bring it back to the fore. And then making money, being busy, everything can go along. But being a professional means if you're honest, if you can talk to the people politely, if you can moral reasonably and be ethical, what's that got to do with time? I mean, these are sometimes, excuse my saying, sir, these are sometimes used as excuses. If you have 5 minutes with the patient instead of 20, you can still be polite. You can still have a doctor-patient relationship. You can still explain the most important things, or you can, tackle whatever the patient is worried about. So I don't buy this entirely, that there's professionalism on one side and making money on the other. You can do it because some of those pillars are constant. And one of the pillars is keeping yourself abreast of medicine. That doesn't happen when you're seeing patients. That happens when you go home. One of the things is maintaining your professional identity. And that happens when you go into societies and you maintain standards for your profession. You're the gatekeeper into your profession. It happens when you see a denter practicing medicine in the community, and then there's no law to prevent them doing it. So there's only one aspect that happens when you're pushed for time, but not all the time. All the other pillars of medicine, of ethics, of communication skills, of caring, of accountability, of admitting errors. What's that got to do with seeing the number of patients? You can still do it. So I
And
just
actually, sorry, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, sorry, well, it's still in my mind, is that if you're looking at development of services at a time when targets and things, so we went through a big change, of course, in the NHS. And what we had to factor in was communicating that to the patients, actually. So, if you found that you only had a 10-minute slot and that's all you were allowed, at the end of 10 minutes, you had to say to the patient, look, I'm very sorry. This is the new rule. Why don't you come back and see me tomorrow? Or, why don't we follow this up with the telephone consultation where we can spend half an hour of my time where I can have a longer conversation with you. And again, 9 out of 10 patients would be okay. They get a little bit irritated and short-changed, but they would go away, because they knew that they had another opportunity to finish off the consultation. So there are ways around that. We need to train people to do it.
So again, coming back to the same, I think, point taking that if you're instilling it right from the beginning, right on these values, these virtues, I think by the time they are into the profession, even if they're faking it, probably at the end of the day, they will have some aspect of it which is perhaps genuine towards it as well. So I think just summing it all together, what we've been talking so far. So right, thank you. I know we are really over time, but yeah, over to you, Azam.
Last question, and that is how to bring about long-term tangible improvements in the values such as accountability, integrity, duty, responsibility, etc., exemplified by the employees of institution, especially in times as stressful and resource constrained, as well as time challenged, such as currently during the pandemic. And how do you measure and quantifying them on a continuous basis to eliminate biases in them? So I guess this is a two-part question.
So I think the first part was answered because
Yes.
it is a lot of the same that we just answered. That how are we honest, or we maintain confidentiality or patient beneficence in trying times? You have to do it. There's no other way. You can't suddenly become dishonest just because the times are different, or you're stressed, or there's an emergency. So those things don't hold. The second one was the biases. The biases, I think thank you for that question. One of the most important things that need to be done when the students come in, or the faculty come in, or any workshop when you have for professionalism, is to ask questions and have people write down, what do they feel? What do they feel about mentoring a female resident? Are they against it, or are they for it? Both are not the correct answer. So it's important for people to think about what inherent biases they may actually be coming with, but they are unaware of. And if you hold workshops and sessions in which your own people can actually explore their own inherent biases and face them. If you do not know your own biases, you can't even correct it. So that, I think, was a fantastic question. Thank you.
And just to add to what Dr. Zubairi has said, I would just say that yes, it's important that we teach our students resilience. In times of stress, in times when circumstances are challenging, it's extremely important. So if you've taught them, they will be able to bring it up. They will be able to, at the nick of the time, somehow demonstrate some part of it.
Okay,
So, yeah.
there's one last thing. I just want to say, and Azam, after that, I'm not going to say anything. My last thing is, when you're thinking of teaching students, so some of these attitudes are caught, not taught. So we can very correctly say, Sonia, we must teach them. But they will only learn it if they see it portrayed by us. They have to see it in action. They have to see it every day of their clinical lives. They have to see it happening on the wards, in the clinics, in the corridors, in the waiting room, in the dining room, everywhere. And that is what is important. And that means that each one of us, each one of you, has to be the highest level of professional for it to be portrayed to everybody around you. And it's not in the clinics. It's in the corridor. It's in the walkway. It's how you walk, how you talk, how you laugh, how you behave, what kind of remarks you make, even when you're sitting at ease. It's all of that and more. So I just want to say, that's it for me for today.
Thank you, Dr. Zuberi. It's like you've been constantly watched. So yes, you're the role model. Yeah.
I'd like
Can I
to
just
add one small thing in this. Yeah, I think these qualities that were mentioned for professionalism, and I think the main issue factor could be that it should be made part of the culture of an institution. So the core institutional values as such, and that could probably help, develop systems around them and kind of help inculcate it within their employees. And hence that, since it's inculcated in the employees, then it kind of role models into the students as well. That's
Agreed.
my small.
Agreed, Azam. Very nicely wrapped
Can
up.
I make one last comment? I know we're coming up. Just one cause for optimism and one cause for reflection. Optimism is that, look, if you don't like guns, you're not going to join the army, right? The same way, we have to assume that people who choose to become medics or healthcare providers actually have, some empathy, some desire to help people in them already. And the goal is like, it's there, we have to polish that gem. And the word of caution, I think, is that especially in the Pakistan system, this decision to become a physician comes very, very early. And for some students, it may not be something that they entirely, it's more by suggestion, so-and-so is a doctor, you should become this. And they don't get the time because we do not allow that time between the end of school and the beginning of a professional college. And that's why I think, I feel that a lot of our problems may relate to that these people, these young people haven't even gotten to know themselves. And we want them to take up an identity that may not come natural to them. And, but that's a bigger conversation of how we approach medical education in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sadaf. So I think that deals with all the questions. I'd like to close by thanking our panelists and our presenter. Thank you, Dr. Vikram, Dr. Sadaf, Dr. Unayab, and Dr. Rukhsana Zuberi. And of course, thank you, Dr. Sonia, for the presentation and all of your inputs. I think we've had a very fruitful discussion, and I'm sure our audience has taken away some very key points and now have some clarity about how professionalism can impact institutions, and of course, how it can be inculcated, developed, and nurtured. So thank you all. And with that, I'd like to conclude this education grand round. And with that, I'd like to say Allah Hafiz.
Thank you very much, Azam. Thank you
So
very
now
much.
we're done. I think it was such a well-chosen topic and very well presented. Thank you. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Zuberi.
you.
Thank you.
Khuda Hafiz to Jah and Sadaf. Thank you. And now everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.